All right, so this is going to walk you through going over Fusion 360. And what we're going to do here is we're going to start by looking at some different pieces of Fusion 360 and how to really navigate around Fusion 360. So you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a box that you can pull and drag around. There's a home icon that you can click on too. That's not going to make a lot of difference until you have something to look at. So you start by defining something called a sketch, and you can create a sketch on a certain plane. So a plane is a two-dimensional object. So I've selected a plane, and now what I'm doing is I'm holding my mouse wheel and I'm moving around. I can also click my home icon or my top icon, and I can move around. Now, what I'm doing to navigate when I have those pieces is holding different buttons. And so you look at your keyboard shortcuts. We're now going to create something called a rectangle, and we're going to specify a width and a length. So we click the rectangle icon on our sketch while our sketch is still active. And then I'm going to hit finish sketch. And now if I click shift and hold my mouse wheel, I will orbit. So I have a different view. I then click the E button to extrude a object so I can move it up or down. And I'm just going to bring it up 6 inches. And now I'm going to zoom out with my scroll wheel. So I'm going to zoom in and zoom out by using my scroll wheel, by rolling it. And I can pivot in the upper corner by dragging around that box, that navigation box. I could also hit shift and push down my scroll wheel to be able to orbit within my three-dimensional space. So I'm clicking on a face of my cube. I've right clicked, and what I'm going to go down is after I right click on that, I'm going to click appearance. And I can choose what it looks like. That can be a material, it can be a color, and I can specify that for a face or for the whole object down the road. And so what you'll notice is as we're clicking on that face, I'm going to click appearance, and I'm going to give it a specific color. And so if I want to pick a color, I could pick a material like concrete, but really if I want to have just a color, I'm just going to have paint. So I'm going to pick paint, I can make it glossy, and then when I click on it, I'm going to drag the green paint over there. If I drag the red just over to the object, it's going to try to turn the whole cube red. So I want to make sure I select my face first and then go from there. So I hit Control Z to undo that, and then I hit red and drag it over that face. And then I'm going to click my face up here, and I'm going to bring over the yellow. So basically I have a cube and I want to try to make each face different. So I'm zooming in and zooming out with my scroll wheel. I have shift and hold it down to pivot. And then I'm going to bring those pieces over after I've selected the face. So I'm going to move around and I'm going to pull that over once I've clicked on my face. Again, I didn't click on the face first. Pull it over. There it is. And then I'm zooming in and out with the scroll wheel. And then I'm clicking shift and holding down the scroll wheel to be able to pivot around. Now I'm going to put white on the bottom. You'll notice that white doesn't actually look white. It looks gray because it has a white background. So if we were to render this, we'd actually get white to come up. But for right now, we're just going to put in white there. We'll know as a placeholder that it actually will be white. All right, so I have a cube that I can navigate around. And I can just basically, the goal of this is to be able to navigate in three-dimensional space. So I have a cube. Again, shift and hold your scroll wheel to be able to orbit. And just push down your scroll wheel to be able to pivot. What we're going to do next is we're going to change our workspace. So we're going to go from our design, we're going to go to our drawing. And it's going to basically generate a two-dimensional drawing for me to be able to use. When I look at this here, I have different options for my paper size. I'm going to pick 11 by 17 or 8.5 by 11, so it's a standard paper size. I'm going to hit OK. I'm just going to accept all the defaults. And then what it's going to do is it's going to give me different viewpoints that I can look at. So you can see these are all of the viewpoints I can look at. I'm going to pull down an isometric one, and then I can specify the scale. So 1 to 1 would be actual size. That doesn't fit on my paper. 1 to 2 would be half size. 1 to 3, 1 to 4, so on and so forth would make a different scale for my object. I'm going to pick 1 to 3 because that seems to fit. And you can see when I do that, it's taken away the color coding and it's created some dashed lines for those hidden lines. And it's created a kind of two-dimensional drawing instead of the actual colors that we have there with pieces. I can go back and I could change it to be the top. I can adjust that as many times as you want. And you'll notice over on the left-hand side, it's created that kind of viewport for me to be able to look up. I can drag it around and move it. And then I can also add text to it so that I know what it is. I'll click the text icon and then I can type in whatever I want. I can change the text height. I can change the text font. I can change basically all your kind of standard word processing components that you got there. I don't have a font size. I have to give it its dimensions in inches, but then I can drag that around. I could call that view one. And now I can do is go to the upper left and I can add another perspective. So I'll make this one the same dimensions as the one before, which was 1 to 3. And then I'm going to leave this one as the top. So this is a top view. I'll click OK. And now what I have is I can add some text there to let people know what that is. So I'll make that a top view. All right, so once I've done that, I have my box that I've created. It's created this untitled PDR drawing. I can dimension it by clicking on my dimension icon. I go to different corners and I pull them off. I can only do that when it's a two-dimensional view, so my isometric views are going to be weird with my dimensions. But when it's a top or a side view, it's easy to pull in your dimensions. So you can see that me trying to make a dimension within my isometric view, and it's not going to work. So I have a PDF, or I'm sorry, I have a drawing, and what I want to do is I want to be able to do a couple of things. I want to add some text to it. I can have a call out, so I can have from a basically a line that calls out the text, and that I could put something that's relevant to this drawing with a call out there. And then I can have, again, different leaders with these, and then I can save this. I'm going to give it a name that's specific to what this project is. And then you'll notice I have two tabs at the top. I have my design, and then I have my drawing next to that. If I click on the little waffle icon, which brings up my data panel, I now have my drawing, which is where all my design is done, and then I have my PDF. I right click my drawing and I want to share it. When I do that, it's going to basically allow me to get a link so that I can get a shareable link where people can view my work. So I'm going to close that. I'm just going to try it again. I'm going to hit share link and click it again. And now it toggles. It gives me a link. I'm going to copy that link and then I'm going to put that into my browser. So I'm basically just going to open up a new tab. And when I drop that in, what I'll see is that shared link is going to take a second to load everything. And the more stuff in the model, the longer it'll take. But I'm going to add that up. And then what we'll see is my design will pop up. I have the same option here. This is not a full, I can't edit it here, but I have some other options. So I can measure things. I can figure out what a distance is. All right, so that's my 6-inch side. I can also go through and look at if there was different parts, I could explode it. And I can also take a section, so I can basically like what happens if I was to cut through this. So I can look at an angle, I can move through it, I can move around it. You can see that shows me what my design looks like. Again, if I have more parts, that's going to be more interesting than just a solid cube. I can mark it up, like means I can draw on it, so I can point to different things. I could add some text. Again, lots of ways to interact with it here that's dynamic. And what we would see is once I have my edits there, if the design changed, let's say we went back and we adjusted it, and so we went back to our design and we looked at it, we wanted to change it, we'd basically just have to save it in Fusion 360, and then we would be able to update it, and our model online would update as well. So you'll see we can go back to Fusion 360 in a second. This allows me to explode it, but there's nothing to explode right now. So if I go back to Fusion 360, and let's say I wanted to adjust something, so I'm in my model, I'm going to click on that face, and I'm going to pull it, I'm going to extrude it up another 2 inches. So now it's not a cube, but it's a rectangular prism. And so I'm going to bring it up, and then I would just save my work here. What that's going to do is it's going to update a couple of things. my drawing is now going to have this warning triangle on it, which means that I need to update that. If I click on the drawing, it'll see that it wants to reassociate those dimensions to make sure that things are correct. And then if I was to go back to my model, my online model, and refresh it, what I would see is that would update too. It might take a little bit of time to load. So that takes you through how to get started, how to make pieces, and how to share a drawing and also share a dynamic link.